Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to another episode of ILLN Opinion Plus, a weekly series airing on Fridays. This is a space for our opinions, where we talk about current events and the questions that the Latino community is curious about. Today, we're joined by Executive Director Andy Wade from the National Alliance on Mental Illness of Illinois. Welcome, Andy. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about NAMI and the work that NAMI does here in Illinois.
Okay. Well, NAMI Illinois is the statewide organization of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, which is the nation's largest grassroots network working on behalf of people with lived experience with mental health concerns. So we're kind of the public in the public conversation about mental health in Illinois.
So the term mental health is used a lot, it's thrown around a lot, but it's a pretty broad term. What does it really mean? How would you define that for us?
Well, mental health is like physical health, which is a broad thing in and of itself. So when we talk about mental health, we're talking about the thinking and feeling processes of normal life and how that affects our ability to function. So it's really how our thoughts and feelings affect our lives.
So basically, it's an extension of physical health.
Yep.
Just as important. What are some of the misconceptions you think that people have on mental health?
Well, with mental health, there's so much stigma and so much misunderstanding that we could spend a whole hour talking about misconceptions. I think the biggest one to me is this idea of sane and who's not sane, or who's got mental health. People with mental health issues are somehow different. Everybody has mental health. And we all, frankly, have days where our mental health might be better or worse than on other days. So the degree to which a mental health condition affects our lives is really the thing to pay attention to. The idea that some people have mental health issues and other people just don't, that's false. Everybody has mental health.
Right. Let's kind of localize this conversation. The state of Illinois recently passed a law that allows public school students to have 5 excused mental health absences in a year. What are the benefits of a law like this?
Well, one, I love it. I have 3 teenagers myself, and I know that when they're sick with the cold or the flu, they shouldn't be in school. It's not good for them. It's not necessarily good for the people around them. So when people are having a mental health crisis, or just having something that's getting in the way of their ability to function, sometimes a sick day can be a very constructive way to get better, to rest and give yourself a break. So the fact that we're treating mental health sick days similar to how we're treating physical health sick days makes total sense to us.
Right. And you mentioned teenagers, which teenagers have about like a rap, right? Of being moody and being, why is that? Like, is that something that makes sense? Like something that should be normalized, or?
Well, just as mental health is something we all have at certain points in our lives, we're different. So when people are in the teen years, that's when we're testing boundaries, trying to create our own identity. Sometimes that can be challenging. You're learning to handle new pressures, and it can be challenging. So how teens are, or how young adults are, or how middle-aged guys like me are, it really doesn't have to do with mental health. It's more where we are, what stage of life we're in. So when you're in adolescence, your brain is still developing and you're changing a lot, but that's just like you're going through puberty.
All right. So it's important at all ages.
Mm-hmm.
And, again, we talked about teenagers. At what age do you say children or teenagers start showing signs or symptoms that something could be an issue mentally with them?
Well, that can happen really early, in preschool, you might see things. I think it's important not to label. It's important to see what's going on with a particular behavior. Is someone crying all the time? Are they unable to interact with their peers? So mental health challenges can happen really at any time in life. just getting back to your earlier question about teens,
Mhm.
one thing that we have noticed, especially since the pandemic, is that mental health challenges for Generation Z, which we call 13 to 30, are disproportionately affecting that population. So there was a challenge with teen suicide being a problem well before the pandemic. But what we're seeing now that the pandemic is happening is that has really taken a toll on younger people. So
And what do
things
you
happen at any time in life, but right now we are really concerned about our teens.
what about the pandemic do you think is triggering that?
Well, it's almost what about the pandemic isn't triggering that? I think we're
True.
all struggling.
Yeah.
I know I had actually started this job 3 weeks before the pandemic began, and was very worried that I would be isolated and not have an opportunity to interact with people.
Mhm.
Isolation is a big one. Loneliness is a big one, but
Yeah.
also chronic stress. And if you think about what has been going on, we're almost 2 years into this now. So that's a lot of chronic stress where our normal routine is disrupted. We're not able to see people in the way that we used to. We're not able to, we're working in different places. I'm sitting in my apartment right now as opposed to an office, and that creates stress.
Right. It's a big change, a lot of changes that we've been going through. Let's kind of take this over. I did a little bit of research on NAMI, and there's specific efforts that have been made to serve the Black and Latinx communities. What does that look like?
I'm glad you asked.
Mhm.
We are looking at everything through the viewpoint of equity. And
Mhm.
equity means everybody gets what they need to thrive and succeed. And if you look at our society right now, resources and support systems aren't equally distributed, especially when we're in a time of crisis or shortage. There's huge shortages in the mental health workforce right now. So in times like that, inequality tends to grow if we don't have a strategy to ensure that it doesn't. So, in mental health in Illinois, the places where there are gaps and the communities where there are gaps are it's fairly predictable. Communities of color, rural Illinois. Certain populations have special needs, LGBTQ communities, which is plural.
Right.
A lot of special mental health needs there. So our Latino outreach is part of our overall equity strategy. It's really very important because Latinos are very underrepresented in the mental health workforce. There are gaps in services. Uh, there's just a lot, and there's also stigma looks differently in every kind of community. So there's a lot of unmet need in our Illinois Latino communities, so that's been a real area of focus for us.
Can you talk about some of those specific programs or services that you offer?
Okay, well, we're trying to offer more in the
Mhm.
Spanish language, for one.
Yeah.
One thing that we've looked at when we came into NAMI is NAMI, like many mental health organizations, we need to do a better job getting everything translated, everything linguistically appropriately for all of our communities. So there's a lot of work to do there. In terms of our effort right now,
Mhm.
actually, the first person that I hired when I took over was Laura Martinez, who was one of our executive directors out in Aurora to head up our mental health equity initiative. So we're doing a lot of relationship building with Latino health organizations, community groups, really covering the waterfront. In terms of what we're offering right now, one thing we've tried to do is increase the amount of Spanish language support programs we have.
Mhm.
So our family support group, for example, it's a wonderful program where it's facilitated by people who have lived through it themselves, who have gone through the experience of helping navigate what it's like to have a family member who's suffering with mental health struggles. We're now offering that in the Spanish language on I think it's the third Thursday of every month. You can check out our website.
Mhm.
Also increasing the amount of information that we have. We've also launched a new initiative in Illinois that is part of a larger national initiative called Compartiendo Esperanza,
Mhm.
which is there's a companion program called Sharing Hope that's targeting African American communities. But what it is an attempt to do, they're video-based community conversations that's trying to talk about mental health issues in ways that Latino communities are comfortable with. Because if you ask about mental health, a lot of times people will clam up. If you ask about wellness, stress, how are you feeling? It's kind of a myth that people won't talk about mental health issues, but we have to talk about them in the right way. And so how I might talk about them isn't necessarily the right way. So comprendo, that's why these are wonderful videos that are really to encourage people to have conversations about mental wellness in a way that invites people to begin the conversation and be more open about talking about things.
That's awesome. I love that you guys are offering so much more in like Spanish because not everyone speaks English, and it's nice to have those resources offered, but if you can't understand what's being said, then you're not going to get the benefits of them, you know?
Right. Well, the other, yeah, we need to do a better job on that. I'll be really honest, and I know that our national office feels the same way, and we're excited about the opportunities, but that's why we've been reaching out to Illinois Unidos. Actually, some of our workforce stuff spun out of some work we were doing with Instituto del Progreso Latino before I even came here. So there's lots of opportunity and lots of need to encourage more people of color, and especially Latinos, to get into the mental health workforce. Not just in mental health, in all areas of health. There's a shortage of bilingual practitioners, and not just bilingual, but culturally competent. People who can talk to other people. So lots of opportunity, but also lots of need right now.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. That's all the time we have right now. So I just want to say thank you again for being with us today. Thank you for being our guest.
Okay, thanks for having us.
Join us next time for another episode. For more information about our discussion today, check out our web story on ILLatinonews.com and follow us on Twitter at IL Latino News. I'm Annabelle Rocha with ILLN Opinion Plus. See you next time.